passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world one ohm at a time. So this week's guest has not called in yet. We're certainly hoping that we will be hearing from her, as she was an exciting and interesting guest. But we can never tell, can we? But I'm just going to have some confidence that she is going to show up and find out what's going on. And I'm just sending her a message right now through LinkedIn, where I connected already, and see if I can get her attention. So before we do that, I will start with my hot under the collar, as I always do. But before, not hot under the collar, it may be either something that makes me hot under the collar or makes me feel warm and fuzzy. It's my hot topic. I've already given it away because I already accidentally said hot under the collar, and I'm afraid this week is a hot under the collar. It is a hot under the collar thing, and it's about these kids who were recently found, 13 of them, that were, being tortured by their parents and were having issues with being chained up and not allowed to open presents and doing all stuff. Obviously, that in of itself is a horrifying thing. And one of the things is that, whenever we're talking about children being abused, whether it's in, child slavery or human trafficking, whether it's in Thailand or Africa or right here in Texas and California. It's always a sad thing. But there are two things that make me specifically hot under the collar for me to that I wanted to talk about today. And one of them was that there were people who did know something was wrong, that suspected. A lot of people were like, oh, I didn't know anything was wrong. But there was something wrong. And they didn't say anything. They didn't push. They didn't, they didn't question. They didn't point it out. They just looked the other way. As somebody who had horrible things that happened in their childhood, I cannot tell you how additionally devastating it was when 40 years later, I had people saying that they knew something was wrong. They knew something was happening, that they knew there was a problem, but they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't know what to say. They didn't speak up. People just didn't talk about that sort of thing, is what I heard. For them to know that something was going on, that I, as a 4-year-old child, a 5-year-old child, a 6-year-old child, was being abused and not to say anything, is a type of criminal negligence. These people who lived around this family, who saw these kids. Now, I hear there were some pretty good shows being put on, and some of the kids, came out and they did something. And but some people knew something was off and that something wasn't right, and they didn't say anything. They didn't speak up for a child who couldn't speak up for themselves. And I don't understand that. As a child who suffered at the hands of nobody being willing to stand up, I don't understand that. And it does make me hot under the collar. Just like it makes me hot under the collar when so many people knew that there was inappropriate sexual behaviors going on by people in the movie industry. When there were bosses that knew that stuff was going on. When we hear about what went on in the doctor who just got sentenced to 175 years because of all of the young female athletes that he sexually abused. And he reported it. I mean, not he reported it. It was reported to the university. It was brought up, and it was dismissed. There are so many times every day when we see something that does not look right, that does not feel right. Every day we have an opportunity to make a difference, to speak up, to say something. Sometimes all we have to say is a kind word. Sometimes we just have to reach out and, give somebody a smile. Or if they seem open to it and it's appropriate, give them a hug. I'm a big hugger. But we don't. We look the other way. It's none of our business. I remember the line in A Christmas Carol when they were talking to Scrooge. And one of the men talking to Scrooge said something about humanity is our business. Charles Dickens wrote that, 150 years ago or more. And it's as true today as it was then. Humanity is our business. Children are our business. Whether they're being bullied by other children or by teachers in the classroom or by parents. Women who are objectified and treated poorly because they're females. I know that I think it was last week, one of my warm and fuzzy hot topics was the Women's March and the fact that Iceland had just passed a law that women doing the same job as men had to be paid the same amount. But there are all sorts of things going on in the world. There are children being abused, women being dominated and suppressed and oppressed and being brought up to believe and are treated like second-class citizens. Same thing with race, in some cases in orientation, where we shrug our shoulders. What can I do? Well, you can speak out. You can speak out and say what you need to say. You can speak out or even just offer a smile, a hand. I don't care whether they're abusing their dog or their child or their spouse or their employee. If abuse is happening, it is up to us to speak out. Humanity is our business. And every time we turn our heads, every time we walk back and pretend not to see, every time we allow an abuser to intimidate us and keeping our mouth shut, we are supporting this. Doing nothing when you know something is going on is negligent. Especially, people don't often talk about the long term, like the long term of what happens to these people. These young women that were sexually abused, these children, what's going to happen to them over the next, not just, well, it's sensational, well, it's in the news and then in the news cycle, and everyone can gasp and be horrified, and yet still turn their back on the child who's being abused next door or down the block, or the person who's being abused by their boss. And we often don't look at what the long-term effect is. Hopefully between now and the time that we come back, because we'll be taking a break in just a moment, my person for the day will be calling in. But things do happen, so we will kind of sort of play it by ear. When we come back, if for some reason today's guest has not called in, we are going to talk about some of the long-term side effects. And I invite, this is a safe space. Call in, 202-570-7057. Share your story, and not only about the story that happened, but by what followed. And we'll be right back.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Tune in to The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Mother, Mother Ocean. Hi, I'm Jimmy Buffett. West Indian manatees are one of the most unique animals on Earth, and we're still finding out so many new things about them. But manatees are endangered, and many of them are killed or injured each year because of watercraft collisions or other human activities. You can help save these gentle marine mammals. For free tips on what you can do, call Save the Manatee Club at 1-800-432-JOIN. Thank you.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world one Om at a time. We had a guest. We're waiting for them to call in. I've texted them. I've called and left them a message. I have checked their confirmation, and they were going to be here. But sometimes things happen. And sometimes things do happen in life, and you just have to roll with it. In our first segment, and I do want to remind people to please call in, 202-570-7057, depending on if and when our guest calls, this is your perfect opportunity to take part in this conversation with me on the air tonight. So we talked in our first segment about the negligence, and I said the word criminal negligence when you look the other way, especially if it involves children who can't or have or are afraid to speak up for themselves. But a lot of times we don't hear about that psychological, emotional, mental damage that happens to somebody that's being abused from the standpoint of they can't speak out. I've had people say, why are women coming forward now and talking about all of the abuse that happened 20 years ago? Well, because 20 years ago, the culture was different. And they were in fear. And they were afraid. They were afraid of retribution. They were afraid because they needed the job. And if they complained, they could end up getting fired, let go, laid off. But also the word would be on the street that they were a troublemaker. Children oftentimes are threatened and fear for their lives. Perpetrators of children are very good at making the children feel like they're responsible, that there's something wrong with them. And that can happen to anybody at any age, depending on how strong their self-worth and their self-esteem is, how much they are within their own center, their own being, their own strength, their own courage. We don't expect small children to be like that. And depending on how you were raised, there are a lot of adults who can be easily intimidated. Some because of gender, some because of orientation. You're brought up to think that if you're a gay male, that somehow you're less of a male or you should be ashamed. And there's a lot of shaming that goes on by our churches and our religions. There's a lot of shaming that goes on by certain culture peculiarities here that isolate people because of gender, race, orientation. And it's supported. It's promoted. We recently had the whole issue with Roy Moore. I mean, we have an issue with our own president who's had, I think it's like over 20 women that have come out. And they all lied? Really? They all were not believed? For years, women do not pursue legal recourse if they've been raped because of they're treated almost as if they were the perpetrators on the stand. They're made to feel that somehow because of the dress they wore or the place that they were at, that they sent the signals, that they invited the violation. And it gets supported. It gets supported by some judges, by police officers. It gets supported in churches. It gets supported all over the place. And not like it used to, but it still happens. And then there is the long-term side effects. The feeling damaged or broken. The fear that you live with. We like to have nice, neat endings. And when the people are rescued, when the princess is rescued, when whoever is rescued, when somebody goes to jail, well, suddenly, then life is all going to be great and it's going to be hunky-dory. And it's not. There are people that spend the whole rest of their lives suffering with emotional and mental illnesses because of tragedies that happened in their childhood that never got fully addressed or supported. It's not like you can just waltz down the street and say, oh, okay, so the person got a slap on the hand. It's even worse when an authority figure appears to get away with it, as if there are no consequences, as if there are no consequences because they were male, or they were the deacon of their church, or they were a lawyer or a judge or a police officer. That somehow, because they were a wasp, that they don't or should not be held responsible for their sting. Boys will be boys. We can't buy into that anymore. We cannot stay quiet and allow boys to be boys. We cannot stand quiet and say that somehow, because of where somebody was born, the wrong side of the track, their skin color, their gender, their orientation, that somehow they have lesser rights. That somehow they deserve to be treated that way. And it still happens. Yes, there are all sorts of movements happening. But one of the things that most angered me about these 13 kids was all the people who did not speak out. And what also angers me, and hopefully would anger you, is the people in power who still continue to avoid accountability because of their title, or because of their wealth, or because of their position. Yes, we are getting more, quote unquote, people that are being held accountable, that are feeling the consequences, but it will never be enough of the people until it is all of the people that are doing this. Until all of the bullies are confronted. Until all of the abusers are held accountable for their actions. And that they're not shrugged off. A few years ago, when a star athlete came up against a girl that he got drunk, and it wasn't that long ago, we're talking the last 2 or 3 years, but he was a star athlete at his college, and she was made out of, she got what she deserved. She was a tramp. She was driven from the school. He was barely given a slap on the hand. That was less than 5 years ago that happened. And it still continues to happen. Yes, we're getting momentum. But you are part of that momentum. And again, I want to encourage you to call in at 202-570-7057. Share your story. Share your thoughts. I'm here to give you voice tonight, to speak out. Now, of course, obviously, I would ask that you mention no names, because if you have the evidence and you have the name, then you should be talking to a lawyer, a police officer, a detective, somebody. But share with people, let people know. Did you have somebody that knew or saw what was happening? Were they complicit through their silence? Because that's part of it. It is a complicity through silence. If you are not speaking out and challenging the problem, then you are part of it. And as long as we are convinced that it is not our problem, if it's not happening to us, it will continue to happen. We get caught up in a lot of foolish arguments all the time. We get sucked in by our political system into us and them mentalities. We like to paint black hats and point fingers. And we have people that are out there just keeping the pot stirred. Because while the pot is stirred, there's a whole lot of things that are happening that they don't want us to see. And our media must have a 24-hour news cycle. It's got to keep things exciting. It's got to keep things interested, so you will keep going back. It has got to misrepresent stories on the headlines. But you have a voice, and now there are lots of voices, and there are more voices than there've ever been that are saying, "Stop! It is not okay." And you need to add yourself to those voices. Whenever anyone is treated lesser, whenever anyone is oppressed, suppressed, abused, it does affect all of us. You may not feel that effect immediately, but it's there. And for those of you who are out there who understand and believe in the nature of energy and the energy that is out there and is happening in the world, well, you need to stop and see, does your silence participate in the negativity of that energy? Do you, keeping silent, contribute energetically to the problem? We all know that there are, especially young children, who are empaths, who pick up on the energy, who take the energy in like you take in food and water. Well, if they are surrounded with negativity, if they are surrounded with judgment and bigotry, if they are surrounded with people who look the other way when bad things are happening to them or somebody they love, then they are eating that energy. And it affects them, not just today, not just tomorrow, but it affects how they interact, see, and are in the world for the rest of their lives to some degree. That is why it's so important that we must stop it now, before another generation gets the message, it's okay, before another generation gets desensitized. We need to stop. And we need to say it's not okay. We need to give voice and be the voice for those people who cannot speak up because they don't know how, because they're afraid, because they're in fear. And we'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
This is why you work so hard to pay the mortgage. Because home is more than four walls and a roof. It's that porch swing on a summer evening. It's everybody over for Sunday dinner, and your family sleeping in their own beds at night. Making Home Affordable is a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov.
Good night, Mama.
This is why. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. This week we, for some reason, our guest is MIA. Hopefully she's okay, and we will talk to her and find out what happened, and maybe we'll get her on at a later show. Right now we have been talking about the criminal negligence of keeping quiet when you know something's going wrong, especially when it's with kids. And that you not only have a need or you have a right to speak up, but you have a mandate. You have a mandate to speak up. To speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And that's not just children. It's anybody who has been treated in such a way that has taken away your rights, or has had their rights taken away through abuse, through oppression, through bullying, and it happens all the time. We are encouraging you to call in and participate in this show at 202-570-7057. I would like to have people call in and share their stories, and not just what happened to them, but also what the longer term effects were. We don't often talk about the longer term effects when a life has been ruined. Now, one of the things I want to talk about in this segment is it's time to hold the press more accountable. And not just the press, but the demon social media. And I'm a big social media guy. You can come comment on this show at facebook.com/MyDrKevin. You can see the posting under tonight's guest, who's missing in action, but you could still post a question or a comment. If you couldn't or didn't want to call in, you could still be part of the conversation by going to facebook.com/MyDrKevin, MYDRKEVIN, and posting something under tonight's show, even though it's not tonight's guest. And I will see it and I would share it on air. But something happened this week, and I saw this really, and I tried to find it on break and I couldn't. It was on Pinterest. It was a meme. And it basically was a picture of Vice President Mike Pence, and it definitely made some kind of statement that people would not need health care if they just went to churches more and prayed more regularly, and that basically if they would just go back to church, God would take care of them and they wouldn't have health issues. When I first saw it, I was horrified that the Vice President of our United States, which, you know, right from the beginning, our founding fathers said church, separation of church and state, would buy into the idea that somehow sickness and illness is punishment because there's not enough people going into church. And then the question is, which church? What church? Your church? Somebody else's church? Does it have to be a Christian church? Can it be a synagogue? Can it be a temple? And who gets to say? So I was horrified by this. But something told me to push deeper. And I read down in some of the comments. And that was going to be a good hot topic that, you know, how can we let somebody like the Vice President of the United States cross those lines when he has sworn to defend and uphold the Constitution, which says separation of church and state. But then I saw this little note, and the little note said, though he never said it, due to the time I spent with him as the governor of Indiana, I know this is what he thinks or feels. And then I was first irritated, a tiny little bit angry, but very sad. Because it's not okay. Am I a big fan of President Trump or Vice President Pence? No, I'm not. I disagree with a lot of what they're putting out. I certainly disagree with some of the ideology that they have expressed. But I don't put words in their mouth. I don't make a claim because I lived in Indiana that this is what he really thinks. We don't know what he really thinks. Maybe he does. Probably he does. But he didn't say it. And when you create a meme and you put the picture of somebody and then you write something beside it, everyone is going to assume that that's because they said it. It doesn't make it right, even if I agree that that probably is how he thinks. When you see some of what he has said some things which are not great. He has said some things which are deeply disturbing. But put those things, those are the things that you need to put on that, what he said, not what you think he thinks. And it's no more okay if that's done with a picture of Mike Pence or Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren. It's not okay to mislead it's only a few seconds. It is only a few seconds that people spend looking at things and seeing things and making assumptions. And when you create something like that, you know that most of the people doing social media are just going to look at it. Then they're going to repeat it. They're going to get in a fight with somebody who maybe thinks that Vice President Pence should be President Pence, who may think that he is the most fabulous politician that's out there. And they have a right to think that. And then you're going to quote something that he didn't actually say. And if they're smart and they challenge it, you can't find that he said it. This is one of the problems with America today. Too many people are misrepresenting stuff, and social media is horrible. Do I use it? Yes. Do I see it has benefits? Absolutely. There have been a lot of good things that have come out of social media. But shame on those people that try to forward their cause by misrepresenting what somebody actually said. That doesn't hurt the person nearly as much as it hurts your cause. Because somebody will figure it out. Somebody will call you on it. Somehow you have taken inflammatory words and you have lit them up and thrown gasoline on them with somebody you disagree with. Or you get together with a bunch of people you agree with and you work yourself up into a furor about something that somebody didn't actually say. It's not okay. America has become the land of illusion and lies and inferences. There's no integrity there. There is nothing to be proud of. Not at all. For years, I have told my clients and my students as I've taught and done work as a spiritual catalyst. I have been in practice for coming up to into my 28th year of working as a spiritual catalyst, coach, counselor, hands-on healer, medical intuitive, teacher, guide. And, you know, you need to be in integrity. You need to insist that other people are in integrity. And you need to hold yourself to that high standard and insist that other people have that high standard. And one of the things I've said is, you know, Spirit can speak through all of us. Spirit speaks equally through the screech of the eagle or, you know, the howl of a wolf as it does through the bray of a donkey. It's all spirit. And if the words are true, they're true. Share them. Share why they're your truth, why you believe them, no matter who said them. Maybe you don't like President Trump. Maybe you don't like Vice President Pence. But that doesn't mean they might not say something that has truth, that is worth sharing. Sharing something somebody says is not giving them the, as we used to call it, the papal blessing. Not at all. You can even say, I may disagree with 95% of everything they say, but this here, this had truth. Don't assign those words to somebody else. Don't not say them because of who said them. We never know who Spirit is going to speak through. And don't repeat something unless you have validated, verified that it's true, or you have participated in a lie.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. The majority of victims know their attacker. It could be your friend, your neighbor, or someone you met at a party. If you said no, it's rape, and it's a crime. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline today at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAIN.org. That's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the last segment of the Dr. Kevin Show this week. Our guest this week, we're hoping that she is okay. She was missing in action. We've been having lots of discussions about speaking out, speaking for people who have no voice, and about integrity. You can join these conversations by calling in at 202-570-7057. or you can go and post on facebook.com/MyDrKevin. If you are listening to this as a replay and there was something you wanted to share, you can still go to facebook.com/MyDrKevin, and you can post on that timeline for today's show, even though today's show said that we were going to be having Eleanor Stutz on as a guest, but it didn't happen. But if you're listening to the show and you wanted to comment on some of this conversation or share your story, then feel free to go to facebook.com and do so by going facebook.com/MyDrKevin. When you're on there, make sure you like the page, because I'm the likable guy. If you have any questions about me being a likable guy, just ask me. I just told you I'm a likable guy. So like the page, and you will get notifications of my upcoming guests and my upcoming shows, and which ones you may want to actually listen to while they're being taped live, so that you can call in and be part of the conversation. A lot of times people do not understand the journey of the victim. We've talked about that a little bit in one of the previous segments, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. Being the journey of the victim. Feeling like somehow, especially if it happens when you're young, that it is your fault, that you deserved it. Perpetrators will oftentimes use that to keep kids quiet, to keep kids silent. I know that one of my perpetrators told me that my parents wanted him to do what he was doing to me. He even said to me at one point that he convinced my parents to not kill me, but that if I ever said anything, that my parents would be hurt and it would be my fault. That my brothers would be hurt and it would be my fault. Did I know any better? At 4, at 5, at 6? No, I didn't know any better. But you don't know any better sometimes at 12 or 14. Sometimes you don't know any better at 20. If you have been brought up in a very dominated way, if you've been brought up with any kind of abuse, even if that's just verbal abuse, if you have been put down or minimized, if you've been afraid to speak out, there is such things as energetic abuse. You can have energetic physical abuse. Maybe they never hit you, but they're always sprung as if they're going to. Sometimes those individuals may even end up getting involved with somebody that hits them because it's a relief, because they're always waiting for the hit. And then we have energy. That energy is being flung at them, and that they take that like you would take a hit. It does happen. Maybe you were not sexually abused, but you were looked at and lusted after, and comments were made to you that were inappropriate because of the person, because of the role they played in your life, because of your age, because of their age. Just because they didn't actually touch you did not mean that you may not show the signs of being sexually abused. So a lot of people today still struggle. They struggle because, and I remember one client telling me that, they felt dirty, and that when they became a teenager, that their father would still come in to the bathroom when they were showering, and they had a glass door, and he would watch his daughter shower. But in her mind, and what she was told was, well, no, that's not okay, but that was not really sexual abuse. Did he ever touch you? No, you can be sexually abused without being touched. You can be physically abused without being touched. And you can certainly be emotionally and mentally abused through words or a lack of. There are all sorts of ways in which you can oppress, suppress, bully, abuse somebody who is in a position of authority. Whether that position is at the position of a parent or a teacher or a sibling or a family friend. Sometimes there have been times when that which is communicated through movies and TV oppresses, bullies, makes you feel like there must be something wrong with you. If you're listening to the Dr. Kevin Show on OMTimes, you may have a psychic history that you were abused about. And that abuse wasn't intentional, perhaps. Maybe it was. Maybe if you tried to express the fact that you saw things or felt things, that you knew who called on the phone, or grandma still talked to you even though she was dead, that you were told that you were lying, or there was something wrong with you, or that it was evil. That's just another kind of abuse. When students study with me and do a psychic development course, I have them write their psychic history. Not only everything they can remember that now looking back they can see may have had some psychic overtones, but what were the responses? Was it ignored? Was it laughed at? Was it horrified? Were you compared to crazy Aunt Helen? Don't tell me you're going to be like crazy Aunt Helen. She heard voices, and you know what happens to people that hear voices? Well, if you're clairaudient, you might hear voices. If you're clairvoyant, you might get visions. If you're an empath, you will feel other people's emotions, good and bad. You may not have emotional and mental illness, but your psychic abilities, if not explained and supported and worked with, will give them to you, will make you feel like there is something wrong with you, will have you be put on medication to shut you down instead of trying to explore and find out what's going on. Are there mental illnesses? Absolutely. Are there emotional illnesses? Absolutely. Are there psychic abilities? Absolutely. And depending on how they're treated, how they're understood, how they're communicated to you about them, they can be mistaken for mental and emotional issues. They can be used against you as if there is something wrong. You can have your whole reality of what is true and not true be very negatively impacted. You can learn or be taught to not trust your own inner thoughts or feelings or whatever is going on. All of those things are just another kind of abuse. There is religious abuse and there's spiritual abuse. There are things that can be communicated to you that make you feel like you are a horrible person. That being you is not okay. That you will not be accepted. That you are a deviant or a pervert. When you are just different. Now, I'm not saying deviants and perverts don't exist, because they do. And as often as not, they show up as normal, everyday people. They show up as deacons of the church, postmen, police officers. They can show up and be the most respected person in town. They don't wear a sign. They don't lurk around. There isn't something on their forehead. They don't have a big P or a D. They don't wear a scarlet A. I've always found it funny that the big thing is that, a gay man is going to be a pedophile, that they're going to go after little boys. And what reality shows us is it's the most pedophiles, majority of them are white heterosexual men. They're not gay men. They're not lesbians. They're not born on the wrong side of the track. We will see you next week here, same time, same station, and same call-in number on the Dr. Kevin Show.